welcome to 2025 and a new season of our podcast, Brainstorms. And we couldn't be more thrilled to be back with you all here in a new year. Those of you who have watched our website or our LinkedIn posts know that our Resurrecting Lives Foundation mantra for this year is come alive in 25. And by that, we mean we want to unite the nation. We want to come alive. We want to start really doing things both legislatively and within our communities for our veterans who have returned from the global war and terror and who are struggling with traumatic brain injury. And those of you who have been following us know that when I'm wearing this sweater, it means that we're going to be talking with Chief Joe Pisano in San Diego about VISTA, and we'll explain that in just a little bit. So we really thank you all for being back with us. We want to thank our new sponsor, who we are so thankful for, and that is the Fred and June McMurray Foundation in Los Angeles. And for those of you who may be a little too young to remember My Three Sons, which where Fred McMurray was the iconic father, he was also one of the most powerful people in Hollywood in the early years, in the 1930s, 1940s, 1950s. And whereas he was unable to serve in World War II because of some health conditions on his physical, he became the number one spokesperson on war bond films and films explaining to the American people what was going on, and one of the most incredible fundraisers for the war effort. So we really want to thank them so much, and the board of the Fred and June McMurray Foundation for listening to our podcast and deciding, yes, we want to go ahead with them. So we are very happy about that. We are here in our same studio, our wonderful Sycamore Studios in Plain City, Ohio. And I usually don't mention the day that we record these particular podcasts, but today I am, because it is the Feast of the Epiphany. It's a time in American history. You know, January 6th is forever going to be a day in our history, a day where we decided we needed change. We needed all to get together. So we're really happy about that day. And we did want to mention it. Plus, anybody who's watching the news or remembers the news for today will remember that the entire Midwest is under a storm warning. And it was truly miraculous that I was able to make it here to the studio. And my vets will understand. I mean, they are the people who taught me failure is not an option. Let me tell you, it seemed like an option about 5 times along my journey, but here we are. We're so thankful that you're joining us as well. One other person we have to shout out to is one of our first supporters, and that is Coach Lou Holtz, the famous Notre Dame coach, national championship coach. Today is his birthday. We want to wish him a happy birthday. We want to thank him for all of his support and bring out to our audience one of the major themes of 2025, and that is that Coach Holtz states that one of the reasons that he was able to be such an incredible football coach is because of his Army training. He was ROTC, military artillery officer, who states that the discipline and the perseverance and the accountability that he learned in the military helped him carry on in life. And we believe that about each and every one of our veterans, and are going to be carrying that theme this particular year. So we are in a new year of our campaign for VISTA, Veterans Standing Together Across America. It is the creation of our retired Navy chief, Joe Pisano, who is joining us from a balmy San Diego right now. We are very happy to invite him. And Chief, welcome to snowbound Ohio. We're so happy to hear, first of all, what all we accomplished last year. Secondly, what we're doing this year. And thirdly, what is your advice for a new campaign, a Guardian campaign that you're also starting? So welcome, Chief Pisano.
Well, welcome in not quite so sunny San Diego yet, because it's still dark 30 for us. But definitely feel the cold, maybe not quite as much as you do, but here in San Diego, this is considered our cold. So thank you for inviting me to the podcast.
Oh, we wouldn't think of starting the year with anybody else since we started our whole podcast season with you last year. So tell us what did you accomplish with VISTA last year?
So VISTA, Veterans Standing Together Across America, the campaign itself, obviously it started in Ohio in November of 2023. And with your foundation, Resurrecting Lives Foundation, we were able to get two additional flags, one in Hawaii and one in Alaska, with great importance and urgency to get the platform set up in those two states because of the suicide rate. Um, both journeys were definitely an amazing experience. We met a lot of beautiful people. I also got to meet a beautiful donkey, Dixie, and it
In
was just one
Hawaii, in
in Hawaii,
Hawaii.
yeah, in Hawaii. And we definitely set the stage for how this Vista campaign can really affect lives in such a positive way.
And Chief, if I can just jump in, it also speaks to the collaborative efforts that this campaign adds. Because when you mention Dixie the donkey, you're talking about the Veterans Farm that Emily Evans has in the Hilo area. And she was one of our podcast guests last year, speaking at Thanksgiving time about, how to keep the food supply going and all of that. So we were able to make some very important contacts and some very important collaborations. If you could first speak to our event, which was November 1st in 2023, kind of the kickoff of Vista here at the National Veterans Memorial and Museum. Tell us just a little bit about how that went and why that was such a significant kickoff.
Right. So, you and I had the idea of starting a campaign, a suicide prevention campaign for our veterans. And, the idea of creating a flag for every state starts with one.
Right.
And, apart from the San Diego flag, which represents California, the original, Ohio was, a no-brainer as to let's start there, with all your contacts and you're based out of Ohio. The event itself at the National Veterans Memorial and Museum was a very special setting. We were able to draw a crowd of about 100 audience people, veterans and civilian.
Right.
Um, General Ferreter being the first signature was very instrumental in kicking it off. Um, I saw in my experience with the signing of the flag, just the embrace, um, the connection between the veterans that had served and hearing the stories of veterans signing the flag and the families that were signing the flag, that this was something more than just an art piece. It was a way to literally connect the dots in our community and realize that we're all one and the same. So yes, it was a very special moment. I think for me, the most special part of the experience was the day after.
Right.
And what I
Right.
mean by that is, we were ready to pick up the flag and transport it, and a school, a field trip school, was there with, maybe 100 children, about the middle school age, and they were just embracing the flag art piece itself. And then all of a sudden, everyone wanted to take a picture next to it. They wanted to, hear the stories. And it was really nice to see that our younger generation took such an interest and a pride in the flag, and go ahead.
And for those who haven't quite seen your 3D art piece, which is, made of drywall screws and still has movement, and I'll have you talk about it in a moment. Then you created frames around the flag where
Correct.
veterans can sign, their names, their dates of service, their ranks, what they did, and tell their story as they're signing it. And I recall one of those young students coming up to us afterwards, and I get choked up every time I think about it. And he said, thank you so much for explaining this. I'm going to be president someday. Do you remember that?
Yes,
I
I
mean,
remember that young
that
boy.
was
Yes.
amazing. And
Yeah.
we're a shout out to him as well, because it does bring what we've always talked about, a sense of history and honor and healing. So if you could
Yes.
explain a little bit about how this concept began and how you construct each flag in each state.
So the beginning was literally in 2018, wanting to draw the American flag. Took several pictures, put it on my Facebook page, and asked people to vote for the best image. My son Joey picked the best image. And then I went on to YouTube, looked for another art technique, 3D specifically. Came across Andrew Myers working with screws, and I said, wow, his technique and medium and my image, what a great marriage that could be. So sure enough, I was able to create the first flag with about 4,300 drywall screws, one frame,
Wow.
about 100 veteran signatures. Fast forward to 2025, five frames going on a sixth, over 2,000 veteran signatures from
Amazing.
World War One all the way to the global war on terrorism, Iraq and Afghanistan, to MWDs and an E1 to an O10. So
And if
the
you can
ranks are
explain those terms, the
so
working
and
dogs, not
right. So,
everybody knows all of your lingo.
okay, so an E1 would be literally just coming into the military, starting out very fresh, boot camp. And then an O10 being the highest rank, a four-star admiral general. Um, so it's the full range of ranks, and everyone was just eager and proud to sign it, to be a part of
Right.
something after they were, looking at the other signatures, XPOWs, Purple Heart recipients. I even have five Medal of Honor recipients on the
That's
flag, which is
amazing.
that is truly
Amazing.
a stories that I share and just allow the community to understand that as a private, the capacity to stand above everything and become a Medal of Honor recipient is doable in every demographic and every stage,
Right.
especially when I'm talking to our younger generations.
And when you were talking about MWDs, you're talking about military working dogs. You have paw prints on some of
Yes.
these signatures, which is absolutely amazing. And I will just say to give just a little background to our audience about what happened with your flag in Ohio. Okay. Again, the Resurrecting Lives Foundation, our generous donors were able to get all of the workings for the flags in Ohio, Alaska, and Hawaii. And
Yes.
that particular flag traveled around the state of Ohio. We've got over 1,000 signatures. My hometown of Youngstown, Ohio, then decided that the hometown girl needed to come home, which is where I am living right now, back in Northeast Ohio, and that the flag is now displayed in the rotunda of the courthouse of Mahoning County, and it will have its special room and a special place once a veteran service area is constructed over the course of 2025. So that was very healing for the state, showing people in the communities how many veterans are in their communities and what they're doing and what their stories were. So, each and every flag signing is like a mini, movie on itself, tell what everybody there is thinking, what everybody is doing, and the coming together. But I want to jump to Hawaii, which was our first out. And I want to say that it was the desire of the board and my desire personally that we begin the flags with speaking to the populations that are often forgotten in the military. And we started with Hawaii and the Southeast Asian population, of which you are a member. Okay. And we then went to Alaska, where the Native American population and the Native Alaskan population is very high. And both of these areas have mega military presence. Every branch of service in Hawaii, same thing in Alaska. And unfortunately, when we talk about Alaska, we have the highest suicide rate, the highest suicide threat calls. So we wanted to get something to them. Let's talk just a little bit about the Hawaiian connection and where that flag has gone in Hawaii. Specifically, didn't you want to bring it to the artist in Maui? I mean, it was, near and dear to your heart after the, fire that rushed through their community.
Right. So Hawaii, again, it was a very special experience. We did make a lot of connections, both active duty veterans and the community itself. Um, yeah, Lahaina, lost its art district, and part of our motivation in our meaning Resurrecting Lives Foundation Pisano Artistry was how can we help stimulate rebirth in the art district community with Lahaina? And by presenting an art piece that was literally created by San Diego, the community of San Diego um, actually installed screws and made their dedication to the community in Hawaii.
Right.
And it was just a handoff of, one community looking out for another community, and that's what it should be, all across the nation. So
Absolutely.
just the idea that we're able to get it there and have everyone, I mean, everyone embrace it as their own.
Right. And I have to give a special shout out, to our friends at AMVETS, because AMVETS Post 26 in Mansfield, who's what primarily supported us with the Vista going through Ohio, and particularly the Sons of AMVETS Post there with their commander, Mr. White. So all of that has been wonderful. But I remember contacting the commander in Hawaii, AMVETS, whose last name was Lazarus. And I said, certainly a hero whose last name is Lazarus can understand a Resurrecting Lives Foundation. And he and the Vice Commander Lamb, just embraced it. Melody Bell from the Cohen Foundation. I mean, we had so many parts of that island, first of all, Oahu, and then secondly, Maui, and then taken to the Big Island, who embraced us from 2,500 miles away, 3,000 miles away. And that shows you the power of this particular campaign. Don't you agree?
Oh, absolutely. And again, it ties in with everyone has an idea of how they want to help our veterans. And, us presenting something more tangible,
Right.
um, be more participating, with the art piece. I think that really kind of shows how all we need to do is get Vista, the flag itself, out there to the open public and let them see it. And I guarantee that, they will embrace it just as much.
Right. And we have to point out the fact that we actually had this event on Super Bowl Sunday, thinking that the Super Bowl game would be long over by the time, and it was not, because it went into overtime.
Yeah.
And the commander turned off the TV and said, "This is more important. We're going to honor our veterans." And that was amazing, as well as having several talks from the commander in in the Pacific from the U.S. Navy, who spoke about this important issue of suicide prevention and its importance in both the military as well as in our veterans.
Yes, and it's really special that he did that
I
to
agree.
really kind of say, okay, we're watching two teams play football with an audience of millions,
Right.
and yet the true heroes, may get a handful of an audience. So we need to
Right.
turn that around and make the importance of any, spectacle or spectator sport and realize that, our attention needs to be drawn towards the ones that keep us free.
Correct. I mean, we in our nation, we idolize our entertainment people, and I'm not taking anything away from athletes, professional athletes, and what they go through, or entertainment people who can change, society just by how well they can act. But I think it did bring it home. None of them can perform anything without the 1% of our nation that is our U.S. military. So, and tell us just a little bit about how Hawaii's been in touch with you, and they've taken that flag around to different places within the islands, correct?
Yes. So again, the idea was that Resurrecting Lives would sponsor a flag. I would create it. We would gift it to the
Correct.
particular state. Well, in Hawaii, um, they took custody of it. The Sons of Amvis and Cohen Clinic, they took not only custody of it, but then they include it in certain events that they know that there's going to be a strong presence of the veterans population and the community. And again, perpetuating the whole idea of creating a flag that we can get signatures. And it's not just the signatures, it's a veteran identifying that he served and a family
Or she
member
served. Yeah.
identifying, or she served, yes, identifying that, they were a part of something much bigger than themselves. And then
Right.
unfortunately, once they get out, it's almost like they disappear. They
Right.
become invisible again. So we bring that visibility back into them, bring a sense of purpose in a lot of cases for our veterans.
Right. And I think if we could touch on the Alaska flag, which was in conjunction with one of our Resurrecting Lives Foundation favorite sons, Patrick Romeo, who once again rode his motorcycle in the Hoka Challenge for suicide prevention, the 10,000-mile motorcycle ride that he took for the second time at an age in his late 50s, and was able to collect us quite a bit of money for suicide prevention projects going forward. Tell us a little bit about that, because you were actually there.
Yes, so this is an event that I was actually able to bring my son with me, so he got to see
Okay.
and experience the whole thing. Um, I can say that meeting Patrick Romeo was more than just an honor, right? It was
Yeah.
more like, we have many people that will definitely say they want to support us and want to support the cause, suicide prevention. And then you have the ones that actually put boots on ground
Right.
and really have action.
Right.
So Patrick Romeo epitomizes that, not just by literally, riding across America, but the grueling challenge to stay within the parameters of this ride
Right.
was truly remarkable. I can't imagine that, it's not for someone who takes the suicide prevention lightly.
Right. And his whole family from Youngstown, my hometown again, uh, were there to support him as well. I
Yes,
mean, came across, the nation and did that all, I've got to say, on his own dime. They did that all on their own money, so that every single dollar that was donated would go to resurrecting lives. And of course, our motto is like 90 to 92% of everything that we get goes directly to veteran services. So that was another thing that I think was really important. And we were able to point out the fact that 25% of the population in Alaska has served in our military. And as we stated a couple times, it's the land of eternal darkness. I mean, 6 months a year, it's dark. And we think it's cold. And so here, this is a regular day for 6 months at least, in the guys at Anchorage and in Fairbanks, which is even worse, where the major bases are. But they have the number one suicide rate in both the military and in our veterans, and we need to reach out from the lower 48. So, we have a campaign still ongoing about the seasonal
absolutely.
affective disorder lighting, getting lights to them so that they have light and they think about us. I mean, that was one of the things that you really pointed out, that this flag came from the lower 48. And tell just a little bit about its journey, because it was not easy to get from California to Alaska,
No,
was it? I mean,
right. No, it's so, both flags, both the Hawaii
oh,
flag and
right.
the Alaska flag, even the Ohio flag, I drove across the country to deliver it
That's
to
true too.
Ohio. Um, but yes, so we had, great sponsorship leading to getting the flag to Alaska, and I held my breath. It was on the plane, Alaska Airlines. They delivered it to Ohio, and Fisher House received it and
To
asked them to take.
Anchorage, yeah,
Yeah,
the Fisher House, yeah.
yes, thank you. And yes, so it was just pins and needles until it got there because,
Right.
again, there is that uncertainty. And with everyone that participated in creating the flag, Alaska, um, it was nice to see that when they opened up the package and saw it in person, because again, everything was by photos at first. And so
Right.
when you see it in person, it's an experience. It's not just
Right.
you look at a piece of artwork. It's definitely an experience.
And Chief, you yourself are an experience while you're making these, because I really specifically would love you to talk about the differences in the frame that you did with Alaska because of the suicide rate there, and the background, because every single flag that you do, you have somebody take a picture of the flag like flying over the Capitol, and then you do your thing. And
Right.
correct me if I'm saying this wrong, but I've worked with you long enough. I'm pretty sure that I know your drumbeat. But tell us just a little bit about how anybody who looks at that flag knows it's from Alaska. Go.
Okay. So my favorite doc actually kind of gave me some inspiration and guidance. So the Alaska flag is a flag that was flown over Alaska, just as the Hawaii flag, that flag image
Right.
was flown over the Arizona. So I get to Alaska, and how do we make Alaska flag unique to all the other 49 states? Well, there's a couple things. You have the dipper,
Okay.
um, and so it's strategically placed in the background. So kind of if you know, you know, would see it and say automatically, wow, that's unique to our state. The
Right.
other thing that was really moving, and I didn't anticipate it as much as you did when you first suggested it, but to make the frame, so all the frames that I worked with my flags are white frames.
Right.
And you had suggested, well, why don't we do a black frame first? Second frame would be gray, and then subsequent ones would be white, kind of signifying Alaska in the dark, and we're guiding them to the light, which
Right. Right.
they've already done it. So the Fisher House has already created the second frame and made it gray. So the first
Right.
frame is black with silver signatures, so it really pops out.
Right.
Oh, and the background, the Northern Lights, is kind of what's comes out and hits you really like if you know, you know. So that was a big kind of giveaway that it's Alaska. So the frame with the gray is, signed in a black marker. And so the third frame and the rest of them will be in white. And again, it just signifies that, we're doing our part to help our veterans in Alaska transition from a very, maybe dark, struggling place and seeing the light. And it is gradual. It's not something that, one day they're, really
Right.
bad off and the next day, they're fine. I mean, it
Right.
takes, time. So there's a lot of symbolism within that flag and
Oh,
that
there
art piece.
certainly is. And we've got to thank Teresa Nidro and Billy Chisholm, who kind of spearheaded it. Teresa is in charge of the Fisher House, the house that allows veterans' families to stay there free while their loved ones are being cared for in the hospital. And it was amazing because the event was actually in August to coincide with the end of the Hoka Hey Challenge. So, mid August in the teens of August. And between that and when it got very dark and very cold, they did double digit. I mean, they were moving that flag everywhere throughout that state. And I thought that was amazing, right?
Right. So yeah, as soon as we left, after our inaugural signing in Alaska was done, Teresa and her group actually had several events
Yeah,
um, to the point where they had to make additional frames. So
I know.
um, all I can think, when I see that is it works. It's working. And
Well,
so,
so who do you want to target in 2025? We're looking at states with big veterans populations
right.
and histories. And what are your thoughts going forward? And we're going forward with you, by the way. We'd like this whole audience to be going forward with you. What are you thinking of, Chief?
So there are a handful of states. I wish I could make a flag for every state right now.
Right, right. We
But there
do
is
too.
certain there are certain challenges, and we'll get to that in a moment. But Florida would be a great state to target.
Right.
My sister
Third
lives there,
largest
Lisa.
veterans population. Yes.
hmm our Skylar is there as well. So Florida would be a great candidate for a Vista flag. Texas
Oh,
would be
yes.
a great candidate for a flag. Now, I will have to say, all my flags are done with drywall screws.
Right.
And when we talk about Texas, when anyone talks about Texas, it's kind of everything's bigger in Texas.
It
So
is.
my
Right.
my plan is to literally make their flag, or at least the first one, in something like lag screws, something that really is much larger than your average screw, and present it to Texas and let them embrace it and kind of kind of boast about, yes, we are, everything bigger in Texas than even our flag is. So
Right, right.
I'm excited to kind of draw them into that idea. Arizona would be another one with our Native American population. Um,
Correct. Yeah.
Pennsylvania
All right,
would
next
be
door.
another
I'm
one.
working on that one, Chief. That's why I moved up
Okay.
there. Got to
Okay.
infiltrate into Pennsylvania, the sixth
Right.
largest state, Ohio being the fifth. And
Right.
I wanted to say something, if I could interject here, that
Hmm.
when you mentioned Texas, it reminded me, we really want to thank our U.S. government who welcomed Resurrecting Lives to the Capitol to show brainstorms, number one, and to speak about Vista. And it was because of the contacts of Senator Hirono in Hawaii and Senator Sullivan in Alaska, the U.S. senators who kind of, gave us the go ahead that we were able to do that. And when it comes to Texas, I remember being in Senator Cruz's office and speaking to his aides, and they go, we need more than one in Texas.
Yep.
To your point, we're so big, we need more than one. So it's just very interesting. And we want to go back. We were talking about going
Hmm.
back in March, National Traumatic Brain Injury Awareness Month, again, with the idea of suicide prevention to promote your events, your history, healing, honor events, showing the veterans to the community and the community to the veterans to do that. So yeah, I just
Absolutely.
wanted to give a shout out there.
Oh,
So
no, that's
those sound
great.
like those are pretty high lofty goals you already
Yeah,
have made for
expectation definitely.
2025.
No, and it's definitely doable. Um, as long as my hands, kind of stay together, and
Yeah,
I usually press through any of my discomfort when I'm creating a flag, knowing that, if I save one life because of the art that I do,
right,
because of the community that becomes involved, then
right.
it's worth it. Um, it's just one of those things where I know that there are veterans and even active duty members that are struggling far worse than I am.
Well,
And
and
so,
we appreciate that because I have seen your hands bloodied, crusted, arthritic. Sorry, there is some arthritis there. You've been working at this a little bit too long, and that is, definitely greatly appreciated. And I think you're targeting, if we look at our map of the United States, you're getting the states with the highest veterans population, knowing very well that if we could even get the 10 largest states by the end of 2026, we will have reached about 80 some percent of the
oh,
veteran population. So I think that is really key. And any of our listening members who have relatives or know veterans or military in these states that we're talking about, primarily Florida and Texas being the two biggies, as well as Pennsylvania, please contact us, so that we can kind of jump on from there and see if we can't get the funding for your flags and for your events.
right. And that's very important to say because one of the biggest things, you're in Ohio, I'm in San Diego.
Right.
And, when we get an individual that's boots on ground in that particular city state, it makes our, movement that much easier and doable,
Right.
because realistically, we create the flags to hand to an organization or person and let them kind of continue our vision, our campaign of suicide preventions.
Right, exactly. And I love your idea about Florida because Skylar Burgess, our board member, actually our vice chairman, has been with us for over a decade, is very much boots on the ground, a retired Air Force colonel who lives now in Florida and, came down with us to DC to speak to the Florida representatives for that. And I do believe that's a way of letting, Capitol Hill know, hey, you know, the war may be over in some people's mind, but it's not over in the minds of the nearly 5 times greater suicide rate than combat rate. In the minds of the veterans and their families who come back and can't get to services, healthcare, education, employment. These events allow people in the community to be there, right,
Mhm.
to help them attain those resources and hook up with those resources. And you've noticed that as well, correct?
Oh, absolutely. Again, it's all about reconnecting our service members, our veterans, into a community that one will say thank you, but again, thank you to me is not enough.
Right.
I
Right.
appreciate when anyone, whether I'm in uniform or not, say thank you for your service. I truly appreciate that because just saying that, some people kind of shy away from that gesture, and when they do, I know it's genuine.
Right.
But to our point, your point, there is a suicide rate that is unacceptable.
Unacceptable in anybody's
And
book.
and so, when you came to me like, how can we prevent, the suicide rate? How can we, reduce it? And the fact that you kind of bought into my idea is one, amazing one. But what I find more amazing is the fact that everyone that has seen this flag in all the four states has had that similar, wow, this is pretty incredible. How do I become part of it? And so
Yeah.
we just got to keep pressing the audience, and those who haven't seen it yet, that will eventually,
Right.
buy into it and just say, yeah, this is important. You know, make a $5 donation. I don't care. I mean, it's something, and it's just
Right.
showing us that you care enough that, if that's all you can afford is $5, then that's much greater than just walking away.
Right, exactly. And I think what the civilian world needs to know is that realization, that uh, kind of the community coming together to understand what happens, when you go to military service and come out, it is so very important as well. And to that point, we have one more major project going on in Resurrecting Lives this year, and that is the wonderful Forbes Foundation is assisting us with their editors and their book, kind of the book writing arm of the Forbes Foundation. We will have a book coming out this year explaining just this, why we, the civilian world, 99% of the resources, need to take on the project of guarding our guardians. And I bring that up because that's going to be the title of the book. And we are kind of exchanging the word veterans that often gets overused in our nation with guardians, because that's exactly what our military is. They are the guardians not only of our communities, our states, our nation, but literally of the world. And that's a term that you helped by the art piece that you created just recently behind you, which is going to be front and center on our book cover as well. So could you introduce our audience to your latest creation?
Certainly. So, behind me, is an art piece that was initiated by a group who wanted me to feature an art piece at the Army Navy game, in December, and have um, a message of what the struggles are for our veterans, our active duty, either from transitioning, active duty to civilian side or combat to, back here home. And I had this idea in mind, which was be the battlefield cross, but, the added, guardian wings. Um, so I had this in mind and, was already starting it. I had, this featured at the Honor Bowl, which is a high school football tournament,
Mm-hmm.
and, I had several Marines, several football players, several coaches actually start installing screws. Unfortunately, that project got canceled, and I
The
was
Honor
ready to.
Bowl, yeah, it is right now canceled. We're going to see if we
Well,
could resurrect it. We're all about resurrection, right?
right,
So,
and more importantly was the art piece. It was
uh,
canceled, so
uh,
I was ready to scrap it, and I got a call from one of our veterans, a U.S. Coast Guard combat veteran from Vietnam. I never
uh-huh.
knew that the Coast Guard was even part of that,
Yeah.
theater, but it turns out that over 8,600, um, Coast Guard or Coasties were engaged in the Vietnam conflict. So,
Mm-hmm.
it got resurrected, and, it is now behind me. It's called, The Guardian, Wings of Sacrifice,
Very
and
appropriate, because it looks like a guardian angel to me. When you first showed it to me, I said, our two wonderful heroes, Sergeant Zachary McBride and Staff Sergeant Brian Piercy, who we founded this for. I call them our archangels. You've heard me, but
Yes.
this, I mean, Chief, it is an amazing piece. And tell us a little bit about how many screws versus dog
Right.
tags you've used.
Okay, so the battlefield cross itself, boots, rifle, and helmet is created with about 6,000 drywall screws. Um, the helmet and the boots behind me, you see them in gold, and those are actually
Yes.
gold screws with a
Whoa.
little star. So they actually are dedicated to the Gold Star families. And I've had a couple of Gold Star families install screws on behalf of their loved one that they lost, killed in action in Afghanistan.
That's
And
amazing. Amazing honor. Yes.
and then the rifle itself is just regular drywall screws, and I've had several veterans, active duty component, civilians install screws. Um, the Coastie that kind of resurrected this project installed a screw, and I had painted his orange. Um, he has terminal cancer, and it is a result of the exposure to Agent Orange.
Mm.
I also have
As
Brian,
do
who
70,000 or so veterans have.
right,
Yes.
and so I have another one more recently in the global war on terrorism. Brian, now we lost him to the burn pits. That is something very significant in our generation of, theater. The wings are made with about 1,200 dog tags.
Okay.
Each wing has 11 simulated bullet holes. So you put those together, 1111 is Armistice Day. And then you put them completely together, then that's 22. So 22 representing the 22 daily suicides of our veterans. Around the wings are blank dog tags, and I invite veterans and families that have veterans to pick a dog tag, and then I personally emboss the rank name, the branch of service, and the time they served, and something special. So I do have one, Joe P. Martinez. He is a Medal of Honor recipient, first
Wow.
Hispanic to receive the Medal of Honor in World War II.
Wow.
And
From
so,
Alaska, right? He was in
from
Alaska, right?
From Alaska.
Yeah.
And what's interesting about his story is that he's the first American to receive the Medal of Honor while still on American soil since the Civil
Wow.
War. So
Wow.
I was able to meet up with his family, and we honor him, and he's on there. So I have about 200 veterans on the dog tags now, including Patrick Romeo, including
Perfect.
the MWD's Cross-Eyed Jimmy, and then the POWD Sirius, who was the only canine that we lost in 9/11.
I see.
So it definitely is an encompassing piece, but probably one of the more special parts of this is the poppy field.
Yeah.
So below it, which you can't really see right now, I don't think,
No.
is a field of poppies, and they're made with bottle caps. So right now, the field of poppies is 2 feet by 6 feet.
Oh, that's really large.
It's a small. Well, it's small compared to what I want. So
I see. Oh, okay. We get that.
5,000 bottle caps. And my goal is to have 250,000 bottle caps cascading onto the floor to create this enormous field of poppies. And that represents our veterans. And then on the backside, I had a fellow chief, Heather. She actually burned a 4x6 flag with the title of the Guardian Wings of Sacrifice. And that is opened up to our active duty component. So our active duty can actually be a part of this art piece as well. And they just get to sign their name and their rank.
Yeah. And Heather and her whole family,
Oh,
has
they're amazing.
Aiden, her
Aiden
son,
and Avery.
and Avery, her son and daughter, have been involved in so much.
Yes.
That is, definitely a piece going forward. And like I said, we are going to, our title for the book with Forbes is about guarding our guardians. And again, kind of a here's where we were, here's where we need to be in terms of, healthcare, education, and employment. And I think certainly with the, way that our nation started out this year on New Year's Eve with some
Hmm.
veterans issues front and center,
Hmm.
I think we need to understand that between their deployment from the military to what should be, coming back into the community with open arms, there is a disconnect there. And it's up to us to work with the Department of Defense, to work with the Veterans Administration, but the civilian world still has 99% of the resources. So it's up to us to reach out to make those collaborations happen and to make this transition one that provides them with a look ahead and a future. Would you agree with that?
I would. And just the fact that, what you're stating, if any of our listeners, sees this podcast and then just thinks to themselves, well, I could be a resource. What can I do?
Right.
And that's equally important as, the donations, because again, we're using Vista, we're using the Guardian as our platform to get, the word out that, hey, our veterans need help. We have resources. We just got to get them to the resources, whether it's military, VA, or, out in the civilian world.
Right, exactly. And I was on kind of that exploration call with you that you were talking about from the other charitable institution. And I've got to say that it was amazing that they, kept in touch as they were just exploring ideas, but you took the idea that day and by the end of the day had outlined this piece that you were showing. And I think that shows that, timing is everything. And maybe it wasn't quite right at that time for the Army Navy game, but it's quite right for our nation for 2025. So we
Absolutely.
appreciate your doing that.
Oh
What
yeah,
other
definitely.
ideas would you like to throw out for 2025 to our listening audience before we wrap up here, Chief?
It's the support factor. Again,
Yeah.
I'm willing to create the flags till my hands fall off, until I literally just cannot do it physically. And then I'll just recruit, the
Other
community
people?
to help me. Yeah. Um, but again, the support financially is what we need to drive. And I hate asking only because I know that everyone's struggling right now. Everyone's
Right, it's
struggling
true.
financially. I mean, coming out of a COVID pandemic. So it's not easy. And that's why I say, a little bit is better than nothing. Um, and a little bit is greater than just a thank you. So, um, just when you see the artwork and you experience what people actually, um, you know, feel emotionally, and realize that, you're in their space, you
Hmm.
know, you're literally in their space, and, getting that hug from you is priceless.
Yeah,
And guiding them and saying, hey, you're not alone, and this is what I want to do to help. I mean, it speaks volumes.
yeah.
The artwork itself can stand alone, but it's people that drives the mission, and, the campaign is what
Right.
really makes it an entire package.
Right, exactly. Well, we so appreciate your partnering with us these years. I think we've done some interesting things together, Resurrected Lives Foundation and Paisano Artistry, but we've got a whole lot more to go. And the more people we can bring on board with us, the better off we're going to be. So they can find some of this information at your website, which is
Correct.
paisanoartistry.com.
PaisanoArtistry.com, and
Okay,
then resurrectinglives.org
correct.
and vista.com. Yeah.
Right. Well, I believe it's Veterans Standing Together Across America.com. So
Okay.
we have very, very long names to our website. So once you get there, people, please take a good look because
Yeah.
we realize that it's been difficult for you to get there. We so appreciate your joining us from San Diego. We realize it was in the middle of the night for you and you've got a full day's work before you come back to the studio and start working on,
Correct.
your next projects. We definitely
Absolutely.
want to give shout outs to people in Florida and Texas and Pennsylvania and New York, if we could, that to, begin thinking about how you could get a group of people together to get an event and get in a flag there. And we'll kind of keep updates on all of our websites lives going forward. So we
Right.
really appreciate your being here. And to our audience, we're so thankful that you are back here for another year. I wanted to end with one of my favorite quotes from Coach Holtz. Again, those of you who know things that we've written on our website and things that I've written personally. Coach Lou Holtz has always been an inspiration to me. Number one, because I love football. Number two, because I love Notre Dame. And thirdly, because everything that he says is inspiring. So one of the thoughts for this year going forward is, he will tell you to always do the right thing and always do the best you can. And number three, always make people realize how much you care. And I think, Chief, you have done all of those for our nation, for a young baby who was orphaned in the Philippines to being adopted by a Navy family and coming here. You have embraced this country. You are the epitome of embracing the United States of America and reaching out. And that's our goal. We want to come alive as a nation in 2025 and bring all of our military and veterans to safety. And thank you for bringing us this today.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Bye-bye now.
If you are thinking about harming yourself or attempting suicide, tell someone who can help right away. Call 911 for emergency services. Go to the nearest hospital emergency room. Call or text 988 to connect with the 988 Suicide and Crisis Lifeline. This podcast is made possible thanks to a grant from the Overwatch Alliance, and it's produced by the Resurrecting Lives Foundation at the Sycamore Studio. Music is written, performed, and graciously provided by Tim Beckley. Remember, when you work toward brain injury recovery, it is best to journey with a friend and keep your gait steady and your spirit strong. Finally, always seek shelter from your storms.